Okay, have you ever heard the one about the most powerful king on the planet who one day just loses his mind and starts living like an animal? I mean, it's a wild story, right? It comes from the ancient book of Daniel, all about King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. We're talking a story of just insane power, shocking madness, and a transformation that changes absolutely everything. Let's get right into it. So here's the crazy thing. The story actually starts at the end with this incredible public announcement. It's an official decree from Nebuchadnezzar himself, and he's just raving about the God of Israel. Now, you gotta understand, this is coming from the most powerful pagan king in the world, a guy who basically saw himself as a god. So this is, well, it's stunning. And that right there is the big mystery we're gonna unpack. What on earth could happen to a king like this, a king at the absolute top of the world, to make him send out a letter like this for everyone to read? The answer? Well, it's the absolutely shocking story he's about to tell. See, this entire chapter is written like a personal letter from the king himself to all peoples, nations, and languages. It kicks off with a pretty standard royal greeting, but then, bam, it immediately veers into this completely unexpected praise for what he calls the Most High God. You know, there's a cool literary trick going on here. It's called an inclusio, where the story is basically sandwiched between a matching beginning and end. Think of it like a frame for a picture. It's constantly reminding us what the main point is before we even get into the weeds of the story, that it's all about an eternal kingdom that's way bigger than any earthly one. It's like he's giving us the thesis statement right at the top. All right, so the king's story starts with a dream, a really terrifying one. But to get why it hit him so hard, you have to picture where he's at in his life. He tells us himself he's at the absolute peak. He's secure, he's successful, he's totally at ease. I mean, listen to his own words. He had it all. If you know the stories about him, this is when he's the head of gold. He has no enemies, no wars on the horizon, just pure peace and prosperity. But then this dream comes along and just shatters all of that. So he dreams about this enormous tree. And in the ancient world, a huge cosmic tree was a common symbol for a great king. This tree in his dream is so big, it provides for every living thing. But remember, in Babylon, dreams were seen as messages from the gods. So when a heavenly messenger shows up and orders the tree to be chopped down and to have its mind replaced with the mind of an animal, yeah, that is a seriously bad omen. Naturally, the king freaks out. He calls in all his own wise men, and they've got nothing. So finally, he calls for Daniel. And when Daniel hears the dream, the text says he's visibly disturbed. But here's the interesting part. It doesn't seem like he's afraid of the king. It's more like he's afraid for the king. He seems to genuinely care about what's about to happen to him. Daniel doesn't beat around the bush. He just lays it out there. You, O king, are that tree. That magnificent, powerful tree that shelters the world. That's a symbol of Nebuchadnezzar's own greatness, his global power. But the dream, oh, the dream, is a prophecy. It's a prophecy about his fall, a fall that's going to be caused by his own pride. But watch what Daniel does here. It's brilliant. He doesn't just interpret, he sort of edits. Biblical scholar Dr. Wendy Widder points this out. When Nebuchadnezzar tells the dream, he says the tree was in the middle of the earth. He's literally putting himself at the center of the universe. When Daniel repeats it back, he just leaves that little detail out. The king boasts that he sustains everyone, but Daniel carefully rephrases it, saying food was simply available for all. It's a subtle jab, hinting that maybe the king wasn't taking care of his people quite as well as he thought. And that's why Daniel finishes with this incredibly urgent plea. He's basically giving the king an escape hatch, a way out. He says, hey, you can avoid all this if you just change your ways. Stop the injustice, start caring for the vulnerable. It's this super dramatic moment. Is the king gonna listen? Okay, so this brings us to the climax of the whole story. The king has been warned. He has a chance to repent. But in the end, his pride is just too big. A whole year goes by after Daniel's warning. A full 12 months. You could see this as God's patience, just giving the king all the time in the world to change. But he doesn't. He's up on his palace roof one day, looking out over the magnificent city he built, and his pride just boils over. And that's the trigger. And those are the fateful words. It's just pure, uncut arrogance. Listen to the pronouns. I have built by my mighty power for the glory of my majesty. He takes every ounce of credit. And at that exact moment, while the words are still hanging in the air, a voice from heaven speaks. And just like that, it happens. The prophecy is fulfilled. Immediately. He's kicked out of human society, he's eating grass like an ox, his hair and nails grow out, he's living in the wild. Now, the story is really clear here. This isn't some medical condition. It's a theological point. The proudest, most powerful man on earth is completely humbled by being turned into a lowly animal.
But the story doesn't end with him in a field. Remember the dream? They were told to leave the stump of the tree in the ground, and there was a reason for that. This last part is all about the king's comeback.
The turning point is so simple, but so profound. After 7 years of this, he does one thing. He looks up. That's it. He just lifts his eyes to heaven. And in that one moment of acknowledging that there's a power out there higher than him, of giving up his own claim to being the master of the universe, his sanity comes rushing back.
And guess what? He gets it all back. His royal advisors come find him, they put him back on the throne, his authority is restored, and he's actually made even greater than he was before. But this time, he's a fundamentally different person. He finally understands where real greatness actually comes from.
And that brings us right back to where we started. This is the king's final lesson, and it's the answer to our big mystery. The reason he wrote that incredible proclamation of praise, it's because he learned firsthand, the hard way, that God can humble anyone who walks in pride. So this incredible ancient story leaves us with a question that is just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Nebuchadnezzar's journey from the throne to the field and all the way back again really forces us to think about that thin, blurry line between power and pride, between greatness and arrogance, and to wonder if maybe true, lasting strength is found when we finally just look up.